Welcome everyone. Excuse me. If you can't hear me, please tell me, but I'll try not to do most of the talking because I know that I'm going to be hard to hear this evening. So if I could just remind everyone to turn off their cell phones and not talk during the meeting so that council can hold the meeting, and ask all the councillors to respect discussions and not talk amongst themselves. I'll now call the meeting to order. Mr. CAO, do we have quorum for the meeting?
We have quorum, Your Worship.
Okay. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest?
I have conflict for point 12A.
Okay. All right, next item is the agenda. Everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. Do we require any amendments? Okay, I will now take a motion to adopt the agenda. Do we have a mover? Let's see. Seconder?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready for the second?
Question.
Now proceed with the vote. All those in favor of adopting the agenda in its current form, show your consent by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, next item is the minutes from the March 18th meeting. Do you have any questions? Amendments for that? Okay, now take a mover to adopt the minutes for the March 18th meeting. Okay, have a seconder? Are we ready for the question?
Question.
We'll now proceed with the vote. All those in favor of adopting the March 18th meeting minutes, show your consent by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Carried unanimously. Next, questions from the public. Do we have any submitted questions?
We have no submitted questions, Worship.
Okay, do you have any questions from the floor? No? You guys are an easy crowd tonight. Okay, next up, petitions, requests for delegation.
No, we have none, but we did place one.
Under the, okay, so that's all of them. All right. So we'll move on to council member reports. Deputy Mayor Martin, you're up first.
Okay. Stand up so you can take me. First off, regarding our grant policy, we did receive a response from the Louisville Minor Hockey Association. We're receiving a grant. They wrote us a letter. Good afternoon. The Louisville Lightning U15A would like to express our sincere gratitude to your generous support towards the U15B Provincial Championship. With your generous contribution, we have been able to host an incredible event. The 140 plus hockey players and the many parents and supporters will have a long list of memories. Sincerely, and that's from them. Secondly, in talks with residents, there's been a reoccurrence over and over again with lack of response from DTI on multiple situations. I think this is across all Maple Hills and probably the province. Not dealing with the men and women working up at the government branch, but the higher ups in the office. Case files are being closed before work's actually being done. And no one is getting back to them whatsoever. So they're getting frustrated. It's escalating continuously. One roadway in particular that has gone through over and over again is Jovial Drive. Those of you that do not know, you can walk on that road and feel it sink underneath you. So it's that bad. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been a major emphasis from residents on the need for us as council to be going ahead with bylaw enforcement. I know this will come from the strategic planning. I just want to emphasize that it's something that I've heard over and over again. So I will be pushing that when the time does come. As well as there's been interest from the community in starting a sports leisure and events development board. Imagine this would go through Chanel, but basically to get the community all the way across Maple Hills involved, people from different areas to come up with ideas and developments how to and pull resources into bringing affordable sports, leisure, and events to the areas. So that's something that will most likely be coming up in the near future. And people are going to be contacting Chanel on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, next, thank you. Next up, Councillor Esty.
I have no hope.
Okay, we'll move to Councillor Jean Brett.
I just want to remind everybody about our public consultation forums that are taking place next week. There is one at the taking place here at the ICC on Wednesday, the 24th, and that's between 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. And there is another one the next day at the New Hope Community Church, which is on Homestead Road. And that is also just another public consultation session. And again, same times, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Well,
Okay, thanks, Councilor Murray.
Sorry for my tardiness. I don't have anything for you.
Okay, Councilor Sabat.
No, so this time.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right, so so far since our last meeting, it's been busy. It's been a busy month. At the last meeting, I indicated that CAO Legier and I were headed to Fredericton for advocacy days. This was a very productive couple of days. We spent some time learning from a number of different resources about effective ways to communicate, namely when meeting with government officials. We heard various ways other provinces have successfully achieved fiscal reform with their provincial governments, which will be helpful to us when we begin working with the province on that initiative. And our group also got to hear from and ask questions of the leaders of the Green, Liberal, and Conservative parties, allowing us to ask about priorities such as fiscal reform, roads, and express our concerns about the Did You Know insert that went with the tax bills. The sessions were very productive, allowing us an opportunity to remind the province that we need to talk about fiscal reform. At last month's Service Commission meeting, we were presented with an option to partner with UNB for some various research and data gathering for the transportation community. Their goal is to look at various methods of transportation, not just a one-size-fits-all approach, which is beneficial for communities like ours. The board has chosen to start down the path of this partnership. Our Public Safety Committee is currently reaching out to all members of the Southeast Regional Service Commission to get feedback to better understand priorities for the region. We need to know what concerns each area has so that focus is directed in the right places for the right communities. We're discussing policing concerns, regional EMO plans, and fire protection dispatch options. On April 9th, the Service Commission Board and municipal administrators were invited to an RCMP engagement session. I met the new sergeant assigned to our area, Ricky LeBlanc. Great conversations. Priority setting for the region have remained the same. The RCMP has again noted that they are aware that many crimes are still not being reported. They repeated the importance of reporting all crimes, either on the phone or online, because they need this data. They're looking for ways to show the improvements they make, so making visible information. Currently, there are gaps in reporting where the newly formed entities aren't reported on accurately, as we are, being one of them, are still grouped with other areas, but they're actively working on improving the data. A new committee has been formed with the Southeast Regional Service Commission non-urban communities. We've had one meeting and we're looking for ways to work together. This is a new concept and it allows us to work with other municipalities who may face similar challenges or have solutions to a challenge we face. We're looking forward to the work with this group to improve efficiency and relationships among non-urban communities. This past weekend was the annual SERSC members retreat. This is not a vacation. It was a working weekend. We worked on the strategic plan, got updates on all of the mandated services, and had honest conversations about the services. The biggest takeaway that seemed to resonate with most board members was the need for us to find ways to communicate what the various services offer for each community, how to access the services or view the results of the work done for a service. It's a large undertaking, but it's on the list. These committees are working away, as I've noted in the past, with updates from the Tourism Committee and earlier in this report about the Public Safety Committee. But much like our council, these are all brand new and starting from scratch, so visible results are slow at this stage, but we're all working and making progress. There will be another all-council information session for all council members to participate in the near future. And as I said, the Commercial Service Commission is going to look for ways to communicate to the public on these services as well. And finally, yesterday, I participated in an engagement session with Vitalite. They're working on a very interesting pilot project where they're creating teams of doctors to work as a group to see patients. They have 7 teams up and running so far, and it's been reported that the wait times for access to primary care for patients participating with these teams has been reduced by 40 to 50%. They've also accepted a large number of patients in the areas that these teams are working that were on orphan lists, which means they have no doctors. They're actively working to add specialists and social workers to these teams in an effort to speed up the referral process as well. They've stated that they're discussing this pilot with Horizon, but currently Horizon's looking at a different model that focuses more on existing infrastructure instead of resources. Vitality did indicate that infrastructure is challenging for them on this pilot, so we can kind of see why Horizon's looking a different way right now, but they are still talking and trying to work it out. They're currently looking for additional efficiencies within the pilot and talking to the government about the need for funding, as they can only afford to fund 10 teams with the current budget, and 23 are needed to cover their entire network in New Brunswick. The members of the Southeast Regional Service Commission Board in attendance have agreed to support this initiative if access to primary care can be improved by 40 to 50%, and those without doctors are able to access primary care without the need for going to the ER. That would be a drastic improvement over today's healthcare situation. So we hope as a board we can be a supportive voice in this initiative. Yeah. Expected it, right? But all right, so next up, bylaws, motions, and resolutions. And the first one is a presentation from Our Lady of Joy Mission.
So, with us, your worship, we have 3 individuals. We have John and Deborah Mercer and Mr. Reader, who's here on behalf of Bishop Roy. So this was a discussion that we had at the last committee of the whole meeting. I think there were a lot of questions pertaining to the ask of setting up a public cemetery in that area. So you wanted to extend an invitation to the group to maybe present their project. But also, if you have any questions, obviously they would be best suited to answer those questions. Ultimately, just to remind you, council's authority in this is to provide a notice or permission to establish a cemetery as per the Private Cemeteries Act. That's controlled or responsibility of the Department of Health. So that's a requirement to set up a public library. We did receive some information from Plan 360 saying that the property is conforming, meaning that they can access or they can establish a cemetery on the PID that they're proposing. And obviously they simply require development permit to move forward if council granted them. So normally we give groups up to 10 minutes as a group to in terms of expediency, making sure we can continue on with the meeting. The mayor obviously is the one that will determine that. So we'll give you the floor, and obviously if council have questions.
I'm Romeo Warren and council members of Maple Hill. I'm Deborah Mercer, and this is Mr. Connor Reader and my husband John Mercer, all from Our Lady of Joy Mission. What we're requesting is that Our Lady of Joy Mission is a Catholic parish which has been established since 2017 here in the community, and we are requesting a written statement of a resolution for establishing a cemetery at Our Lady of Joy Mission at 1278 Gorge Road. We require this resolution as part of the process under the Cemetery Companies Act for submission to the Ministry of Health for final approval. Like Eve was saying, Plan 360, Phil, who is fortunately present tonight on March 25th, said, I'm confirming that a cemetery is permitted for the use on pit lot 1105543. That's basically, it's pretty straightforward. What we have is a number of requirements that we have to submit to the Ministry of Health. And one of them is the approval or a resolution, I should say, a resolution from the council saying that we are part of the community.
Good.
Any questions?
I don't have a question. As you know, there's multiple sugar camps right there. Maybe
Right.
maple syrup camps. Those are well thought of in our area. A lot of families use them. Have you guys had any interaction or talk with those, the operators?
They are very in connection with the community, Our Lady of Joy Mission community there. They're well known, well established. Right now, there is right on the property is a public Protestant cemetery. So this will be an extension of that about the same size.
My question is, to that point, like that whole parcel of land is going on in your Michigan.
Correct.
So the whole parcel would not be consecrated as cemetery, just.
No, a small portion, about the size, if you know that area, about the size of the Protestant cemetery that is there right now. It will be about that size,
That would be adjacent to it.
Yes.
right beside it.
So further down the road, like facing the road, not behind the church.
So you know where the
I know where the existing
cemetery is, so in
behind it.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. I guess the only question I had was, and I looked through the bylaw and didn't see it. Has anybody said anything about how far you have to be from a well?
Yeah, some of the restrictions for it is, and this all has to be submitted to Ministry of Health. So some of the things are the distance from land surface and any groundwater, a boundary description of the property cemetery. We have to have a detailed statement of the plan, perpetual care. There's a number of things, and one of them is where the groundwater is, and all of that has to be within measurements of the cemetery.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
Hearing that you're not going to use the whole plan, I was worried about the camps themselves and their production because they are.
No, they own, so Our Lady of Joy Mission owns 37 acres. And it's a very small plot, about the size that's existing there right now.
So I'm happy to hear that. I was worried about if
Yeah.
it would interfere vice versa. So.
No, and actually the people that, from the area use those maple trees that are in there. Like they use that for the maple syrup. Our Lady of Joy Mission gives them that every year.
Continue with this, I suppose.
Yeah.
But no, that answers all my questions.
Yeah.
So next to the church, there's a trail that heads into the area where the sugar camps are. Is that within the PID?
There's actually, I can show you a map of it. There's several PID, but none of them will interfere with that road.
Okay,
Is that what you're asking?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if your PID actually interfered, not interfered, but includes that area.
It's actually east of that road.
Okay,
The exact, almost the same, what would you call it? The same measurements as the existing cemetery that's there. So
okay.
just expanding that a bit, but all east of the road.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So I guess at this point, next step would be to have a motion,
Yeah,
May.
on the May meeting agenda.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah.
Do I need to move or do I to proceed or do we?
No, it's just, it'll be put on the agenda for next meeting.
Okay.
Council want to proceed? I'll make a motion. I've been giving some examples from other jurisdictions of similar that have gone through a similar process. So Department of Health were nice to provide us with something. So I'll whip something up and present it to the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Winchell, I forget, what's your first name? Connor. Connor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next up we have grants.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as per the grant policy, have two deadlines that are have us organizations can submit grants to council. The first deadline was March 31st. So by that deadline, we received two. Obviously, to remind council, we wanted to be a bit more fluid as they came in, but obviously these came in at the deadline. So because they came at the deadline, they accept this meeting where we would present those. In your packages, you should have the application forms and the asks. Obviously, if council want to proceed as per the policy, we simply need to make a motion. The only recommendation that we would make is obviously one of the groups, the only question if they have a personal bank account or a bank account that's for the organization. Obviously, not that it's a requirement, but normally we would make the donation or the grant to a community group or an organization under their name, not under the name of a specific individual. So we're not sure if that group meets that threshold, but we can ask that question should council want to move forward with that group. Obviously, they're great proposals. I think they meet the spirit of what council had intended, which was to provide support with groups that provide services to the community. So obviously, council just would need to decide if they're worthy of receiving a subsidy or not. We provided you with a one-pager that basically says what we've granted so far, what's remaining, also what their ask is. On an ongoing basis, on an annual basis, you'll see the same form in the fall when we hear applications again. So you'll have a snapshot or one pager as to where we're at and kind of. So, council have any questions on the specific applications? Chanel and I will do our best to.
So the open door for seniors, you think they are a recognized organization?
Yeah, it would be the Lions Club that organizes it. It would be through the Lions Club. I think it would be the Good Deeds Divas application.
Sure.
We're not sure if they're, I don't want to say an incorporated group, but if they're a structured group that have a separate bank account. And obviously that would be the only concern that we would have. They're a worthy group. They seem to be doing good things. We've heard that they spread joy within the boundaries of our community. It's just the only caveat that we have questions.
I would ask if for purposes of the bank account, so you I think they're centered around the Golden Age Club.
And that's what we weren't.
Would we open to go if we would donate to San Diego Golden Age Club? for that. Would that something they?
I did read in there, somewhere in there that they're working to develop a partnership, so I don't know that they have it yet, just in the documents. So
I'd be more, personally, I'd be more comfortable with online.
We've done things like that in the past, specifically, I'm just gonna use the community rate last year where they weren't really appropriate. We donated the funds to the Arson Community Center, who then made sure expenses were paid for that initiative for the community ring. So a similar arrangement could be made with that community group if that's in place.
And my comment was, I'm very happy to see that it's expanding outside. And I was very pleased with you.
So I guess, do we feel that general consensus for that one is that we'd like to have that arrangement in place before we meet on a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we?
With the votes.
Okay, so we'll table that one for the next.
Yes.
So with regard to the Lakeville Lions Center open doors for seniors, do we have any questions on that one? Do you have any recommendations on that one?
My question on that is, would that be, do they intend to use those funds strictly for that or for the general programming?
It would be for that program specific.
Would that still, like, the Lions Club open to they could ask for grant? They need, or
I can give you a heads up that there is an ask, or there will be an ask in the future, specifically for the club. I think they're working on an initiative for, say, generator.
Yeah, they're looking for a generator to create like a one.
Yeah.
Maybe, but we don't have an ask.
But we were made aware that that ask is in the works, so it's currently not in the system.
but that's what my question is. Would
But
it
they-
be
they could-
that as a separate ask?
It would be a separate ask for a separate program.
So,
I mean, obviously, council would have to treat it at its merit, but also decide if more than one grant would be given in any calendar year for something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with our new policy, the next round, we would receive it at the end of June.
No, it would be at the end of October, which we would see in November. But obviously, you know, where council wanted us to be fluid, should we get one along the way, we'll bring it to council promptly, but obviously we'll educate people to kind of organize it, to kind of, so they know when the deadlines are, and hopefully in future years they can respect those deadlines.
So me with the Lions Center one, if you look at what's budgeted for the year, and if our next round is gonna be October, realizing that we have left the door open for some people in the first year to apply beyond the deadline, we're well under even 25% of the budget. So I'd be good for the 500 for, especially given the nature of the activities for the Lakeville Lions.
Open doors for seniors.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Murray.
No, I was just gonna say the same thing. I know we heard a lot of it when we did all of our strategic planning stuff, is a lot of people were asking for activities and stuff for seniors, for them to get involved and stuff. So I think it's a good initiative for that, a good reason for the grant, you know, where they're actually stepping up and doing that. So.
Okay, Councilor Gondar.
Do we know if this is the first year that they're in operation?
Oh, and the Lions Center has been operating for.
No, but for, you know, this, I guess, this group in particular, the open door for seniors, 'cause that's the name of the organization.
I think they're, I think it's just
I think it's a program
it's a program that they have.
within the Lakeville Community Center.
Okay,
The request did come from one of the board members
okay.
from the Lakeville Center. So I believe it's to add additional programming to their center.
Additional programming to their site, or is it
It,
just, I don't want to get into a position where we're funding programs that are existing or, you know, I don't have a problem with what they're doing. It's more, I just don't want to see us in a position where we're just funding programming at various clubs. And we had nothing to do with, determining that kind of programming, the need for that programming, or anything like that. So, I mean, ultimately, it's great to have programs in place for seniors, and certainly going to support it. But I just want us to be aware that if we start approving one, then it's just going to start coming in from everybody else. And if this is just one program that's being offered at the Lions Club, I mean, if they have like 10, I don't want to see 10 other groups coming in asking for $500. So that's it.
And I think to answer your question, I think when the policy came into place, I think it would have been dumb of us to suspect that nobody, like that, people wouldn't try to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I believe that multiple groups will eventually try to access funding for various programming that they probably currently already have and look at it as a subsidy to help out their operations. Obviously council would then need to determine as applications come in, what type of funding that they grant for each application or just one at a time.
Yeah.
I know that there was great discussion during the establishment of policy that, do we want to let groups apply more than once and should we grant more than two? And, obviously there's a policy in place that, council should follow, but council does have the authority and flexibility to go against the policy as they see fit. It wouldn't be recommended. We'll recommend to council to follow the policy, but at the end of the day, it would be, we suspected that we would get multiple asks down the road for different type of programming.
Yeah.
In this case, I think it's the first one. I think we suspect we'll get another one for potentially an infrastructure upgrade to the facility. So council will have this decide.
And we don't know the cost of this program, so, I guess one of my worries when we first came up with the grant program was if we made the maximum 1,000, people would just ask for 1,000. And here our maximum is 500. So people are always asking for 500 and we're seeing that. So I just want to, I just want us to keep that in mind as we move forward and we get more of these applications.
Kind of echo both David and Eric at the same time. And bring up Council Bella. When it comes to the grants, I'd like to see more details specifically for the program and cost, the breakdown cost on that side of it. And then with Council Murray from the strategic planning, we had a board of 3. They did talk to us after specifically about the need for that program and that they were lacking. And the addition of funds and what they could do with them as far as just getting material in for the seniors and that to use. And I also think it is our responsibility as council to make sure that I do understand what you're saying as far as going to just sending out to all the groups, but these groups do bring something for the community that we can't offer here. I think we do have a responsibility to support those groups, especially when it comes to seniors, as this program will offer safe way for seniors to partake in different activities. That's all I have to say.
My only comment, I guess, is when we were discussing this in the beginning, I guess in the actual grant application itself, you think possibly we could add a few questions such as,
In the form?
yeah,
Absolutely.
like just, just off the top of my head, like when was this formed? Like, how long have you been doing this? Do you have your own bank account? Do you have your own bank account? No, that's a thing. And maybe what is the estimated budget of this specific project? kind of to everyone's point, so we can kind of get a sense of the scale of the ask. Like, are we giving it 10% or 5% or 20%, right? So I think even just a couple more questions would hurt.
So I would agree with that in both of them. Now the other one that we tabled, they did provide supporting documentation, sort of outlining what the plan was. But I would agree that in both of them, without that extra documentation, it was very hard to determine. Like, I think the one that we included already probably had a little more detail about that. Yeah.
And traditionally, when they come in, we kind of follow up and ask for, are there other things, supplemental information you can provide? Is there a detailed budget? Those are all questions that we kind of know. I think it may be a bit more, how do we explicitly ask for it in the application form and make sure that it's there versus following up? We can definitely make some tweaks to the application form to have those requirements when people are submitting.
So yeah, I would say, given that for both of them, our form itself is a learn for us, that we can improve that form. So how do we want to proceed with this, with the open doors for seniors? Are we feeling the same that we need to go back and ask for more information? We'll table it and add it to the next agenda, or do we want to proceed with the?
No, I'm just holding it.
My only question then would be to Councillor Ashley said, what percentage of their budget is it? Like 100% of their budget, 500, or is it like? So echo Councillor Rose. They wouldn't want us to be like their sole sources of funding.
Right, you don't want to.
Want us to fund their whole operation.
Solely based on the conversation, also moving post strategic planning meeting there. And given the understanding of what they were looking for generally, this is, we were the ones that formed the monthly grant policy. I am okay with going ahead, but in the future, we'd definitely like to see the larger version.
I agree.
To proceed with this one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so.
There's a sample motion.
Okay, so are we in agreement with the amount they're requesting?
For the second one, yeah.
Like
For the
lines.
Lakeville?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a reason?
Sure.
Okay.
Be it resolved that council grant the following grants for spring 2024 as per the grant policy P07. An amount of 500 will be given to Lakeville Wine Center. Second.
Okay, are we ready for the question? We'll now proceed with the vote. All those in favor of granting $100 to the Lakeville Wine Center Open Doors for Seniors Club, sure you can start by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And we'll follow up on the other end and we'll look at providing some modifications to the application form that will reflect.
4 days, you don't want something new. Okay, next up, unfinished business.
Regular.
Almost, yeah.
Can I get your name, like, Phil?
Yeah.
You're saying there's like 60, 30 this week.
Member of council, did you want to give?
Yeah, I'll open up. So last regular meeting in March, we held a public hearing for the rezoning application from modern construction. Or modern construction. Asking for a rezoning of a parcel of land to extend extensive resource development. At that public hearing, there were obviously a lot of questions, a lot of things, items that were raised. We did receive some supplemental information primarily a response from Gentech on behalf of Modern, as well as a reply from legal counsel from a proponent that was objecting the application. Obviously, there's a lot of information and data pertaining to concerns on environmental impact and concerns on operations and whatnot. Council's responsibility is not to oversee those types of operations. There's a regulatory body with the Department of Environment and Local Government. Is natural resources involved as well?
No, just.
So the Department of Environment, local government are primarily the regulators of those types of activities. Council's mandate is to determine if this type of operation is conforming to the property and the region in terms of the zoning quest. Again, tonight we tabled it because I think there were still some unanswered questions. We did receive supplemental information. I think I want to remind council that from the date that the public notice were sent to residents, that starts essentially the clock on the amount of time that council have to treat the application, which is a 6-month time frame, which would bring us, those notices were sent in late February, which would bring us to late August as the latest we would have to treat it. Council, if they decide to do first and second reading tonight, which would be our recommendation, it doesn't absolve council doesn't make them obsolete that they're moving forward with it. They're just proceeding to the next step. They would then require, if they want to move forward, a third reading and a reading in its entirety, which could be done at a later date. As a reminder, we can't do everything at the same meeting, so this would ultimately give time to council if they wanted to get more information, ask for more questions. It would give them a certain lapse of time without delaying or risking supplemental meetings if they move forward with it. Obviously, if council move with first and second reading tonight, and they do not act within that 6-month period, it ultimately, what's called, dies on order paper. So it's basically as if they would not move forward with the application. And then should the proponent, the applicant, want to resubmit, they could obviously resubmit for time. So Phil, I don't know if you want to add to that and, maybe provide some insight in some of the correspondence that we're receiving.
I had some things to say, but honestly, you pretty much covered everything I want to say. I just want to reiterate that your legal obligation before voting on this bylaw has been met. So you've had the public hearing and you've received the recommendation, which I'll remind you, the recommendation that came from Plan 360, our Plan Review and Adjustment Committee, was for council to approve this rezoning. It was judged as appropriate. The location was appropriate based on neighboring similar uses and not a lot of conflict with neighboring uses. We did receive additional information, but Gentech did provide an explanation and I guess an alleviation of all these concerns that were brought up. And I guess the big point is zoning really treats about if the land is appropriate in terms of land. Are we too close to houses? Are we going to ruin agricultural land? Are we going to ruin water course, etc.? And all the details pertaining to setbacks or distance from wells and all of that are all treated to what we discussed a lot at the last meeting. Is called the approval to operate. They have quite an extensive process to do monitoring and inspection. And this does not alleviate them from doing that. They'll need to get this approval to operate. And at that time, they'll address things as, well, we discussed a lot about wells on neighboring properties. Well, there's setbacks to respect from these wells if they do judge them as wells. So a lot of concerns and specificities that were brought last time, I just want to reiterate, are covered under this approval to operate. So just to give you a bit of confidence that there is this additional measure on top that makes sure that this is responsible and appropriate. So that summarizes what I have to say. I think Eve talked a lot about the process. So I guess tonight would be to determine if you want to do anything else or not.
So Steve.
So reading over these documents, and I think what we spoke about last time a bit was the fact that in 2007, the agreement was reached that this was supposed to be a conservation zone.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but it just seems a little bit flimsy if something can be deemed conservation and then we're just gonna undo it. So is there any way that we could see the original agreement? Are we allowed doing that just to see the language and?
Yeah, it was part of your package, the original. Okay,
I looked through it, I didn't see it.
okay, well, I can submit it to you
Okay.
again. It was a rezoning and agreement with the provincial department or the provincial government at that point. I just want to say that conservation zone was kind of out of the ordinary to be used in such fashion. It was used as a condition to a rezoning by rezoning another property conservation, but typically conservation zoning is used for conservation land. So typically conservation zoning will be applied where it's a large wetland and ducks and limited owns it. So you zone it conservation to make sure to have this additional layer of protection. In this situation, it was mostly used as like a method of creating a buffer and protecting the viewscape. And things have changed quite significantly between 2007 and today. The development pressure, the need for aggregate has increased quite substantially. And I guess one of our arguments during our report is if this property in question doesn't get exploited, there's going to be this need for aggregate somewhere else. And that means potentially another rezoning somewhere else on the territory of Maple Hills. But yes, I can get you the original agreement.
But would, fine, so would that zone be currently zoned conservation theoretically?
Today it is zone conservation, yes.
The other one that they maybe look, so,
Oh, probably not. Yeah.
okay.
And if I can just add, obviously, council has the final authority on zoning conformity. So if there's an application to rezone any type of property, regardless of what it is, council can determine to move forward or not. So obviously, you know, that's why there's an established process in place to get a recommendation from CROC. That's why there's a public hearing. Obviously, this is a property that has, you know, some history attached to it. There's reasoning behind certain things. So, but at the end of the day, council has the overall authority to determine.
So what reasoning other than the fact that we need aggregate? Are you suggesting there's reasoning?
No, I'm not suggesting there's any reason.
Okay.
I'm just saying that overall council has the overall authority to change zoning in any property.
We did, if I understood the question correctly, the reason why we judged the conservation, the rezoning from conservation to intensive resource development was appropriate is we did have some background on why the zone in conservation. And it was in order to essentially create a buffer, reduce dust and to maintain trees and protect the viewscape. And we kind of went through all those things in our last report. Like I guess I can summarize them again in terms of dust. Well, they do have a mechanism through the approval to operate again to minimize dust, usually sprayed or covered with water. In terms of setback, well, the approval to operate again has minimum setbacks from property line. They are maintaining a 30-meter buffer from their neighboring property. It is a lot less than it is now, but there will still be a certain buffer from the neighboring property. Preserving tree, well, that is one of the sacrifices. Yes, we will be losing trees by rezoning this, will be exploited. And the viewscape, well, we have conducted, well, Genpact has
Right.
conducted a viewscape analysis and we were of the opinion that is not significant. the viewscape will be impacted in certain areas, but they're far away, Beals blink in the viewscape far away, so that's why ultimately our recommendation was for council to approve this rezoning.
Deputy Mayor Martin, then we move Councilor, Councilor.
A couple of questions. In regards to the conservation zone, have you gone through the process before as far as rezoning conservation zone or industrial type use before? I want to know.
No, I've never went from conservation zone to another zone in my career as a planner.
Okay, well, in that case, are you aware of any situations relatively close by? How they went about it, was their responsibilities? Obviously, this area being rural, conservation has a big need to a lot of families. Regardless of why background, conservation does have a big need for families. Was there any responsibility to them put some conservation zone or responsibility to help with conservation, other areas to make up for said loss?
I can't speak for the proponent in that regard, so if they do have intentions to do better conservation zone, but I guess our main point is the way the conservation zone was used in this specific case in order to create a buffer is not typical. Usually conservation zone is for conservation land, and this question is what are we conserving exactly? And the answer was the viewscape and the trees. And then our conclusion was, well, the rezoning doesn't make sense for the activities that have already went through.
We looked at you as the professional with the information, we reached out to other professionals on this. And the last time we went over this, we chose to postpone for obvious reasons. But the information that did come in, there was both letters from Gentech and Trigo regarding to the wells. For their some stating that they were in operation before, etc. Where are you guys? Where's the professionals behind this that spoke about all that?
Yeah, so we're not professional when it comes to the environment and distances from wells, so that's why we've consulted with the appropriate departments, which is the Department of Environment. We've shared the concerns related to distance from wells and all of that to them already, and I guess they'll take that into account during the approval to operate. So my response is we have confidence in the Department of Environment that they'll do what's best in regards to the wells.
And lastly, I mentioned privy to the communication from Trigo. This is not right.
Not the recent one, no.
Asking for basically time to provide a qualified hydraulic, form to assess. I came in late yesterday.
Okay.
I've never seen this as far as my personal experience. I don't know how long this takes. I know we are on a deadline. Is that something you've seen before? How long does that generally?
Not that specific case, no. I guess that would be for council to decide if they want to see the answer, that specific analysis or not. Again, doing readings tonight doesn't commit you to approving the rezoning in the future. If you went over that, your deadline would be August before this process ends, and then we have to give a year for the proponent to make the same application. And I know it sounds a bit like a lazy answer, but I get the approval to operate is really what kind of looks at all these moving parts in regards to debris flying, the accumulation of water, drainage, sedimentation ponds, and all of that, those things. So our recommendation to council would be to trust this process that they'll do what's best.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I know you kind of said this is kind of a one-off thing, that somebody went from what it was zoned before, then to zone it to conservation, then obviously, so is there any much history of this, or like anything else around here that you've kind of seen?
Not in this particular case, no.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was. I know it's got the 30-meter buffer, and they put it in the package to kind of show that it have a little bit But obviously, when you're blasting and stuff, you can see future, you know, that buffer can become less and less if for some reason it's blasting, the other things shift and everything else. So what would kind of guarantee that 30-meter buffer? If they blast right to the corner of it, right to the edge of their 30, they try to take every last bit they can, and then all of a sudden in the future, you know, it collapses or erodes or
Yeah,
whatever.
again, the approval to operate is quite an extensive process where they do monitoring,
Yeah.
inspection and stuff like that. They do a lot more that we can do as that Plan 360.
Yeah.
You do have the specialists and engineers and all that there. So I guess we would rely on them to make sure those 30-meter buffer are respected.
And then,
And again, that wouldn't be Plan 360.
no, yeah. I just was more of a, I didn't know if you had a history of knowing like that on a situation with this where it's kind of gonna be quite a drop off because of all the blasting and stuff, that 30 meters isn't that much when you're kind of looking at like a peak at the end of it, to kind of hold that shape and structure. And then I guess, like I said, most of the other stuff kind of falls under the, operation plan, so. Not sure.
Sure. The only thing that's really changed since 2007 is the fact that we need more aggregate. I mean, it's only been, you know, like 17 years. It's not like we're talking 1977 that this deal was made in 1967. Not that much has changed except for the economic reason. I find it very disheartening that you're asking us to change a zoning for something because you know, the city needs more aggregate. To me, it's just you've come to us before. Plan 360 has come to us before, talking about you know, the environment, the sustainability, and why they make the decisions they do. And then I see a decision that says, you guys come to us and you say, well, you know, conservation land isn't important as long as we get rock. So I just have, you know, to me, it's more of a comment, but I just have a hard time marrying those two beliefs that you come to us with.
I think, I just want to clarify a couple things. The application did not come from Plan 360. It came from our construction. Plan 360's role is along with the plan, is to treat the application and provide a recommendation. They provided a recommendation based on, yes, those economic things, but they've also don't have the duty to operate. At the end of the day, council, any resident at any given time could come up with a project on their parcel of land and ask for zoning, and council will have to treat it, regardless of the designation that they're looking for. So I think the application was received. Again, he's the messenger. So let's try not to kill the messenger.
Oh, yeah, I know. But I've also heard that, you know, that they're not experts in, you know, in that, yes, in the environmental aspect of this project, but they're experts in the economic part. So kind of, they're not economists, they're planners, right? So I don't understand where this recommendation is.
I think it seems like the struggle we're having here is legitimate concerns have been raised. And we're being asked to make a decision, and don't worry about that, somebody else will take care of it. I think that's the struggle we're having around this table.
And you're not wrong, Madam Mayor. And I will say that will happen many, many times in your career while sitting.
Fantastic.
At the council table.
Council Murder.
I think we do have to, again, whether we decide, like, this is an area where it is blasting. So it's not like we're asking for something, a conservation zone, like down to 126, next to Ducks Unlimited, where it's like, hey, yeah, they want to put a quarry out here randomly. This is kind of like an interesting, like, and from my background of like real estate and seeing development around, there is you look at Moncton in 2007 compared to 2024, it's not the same city. there's nothing about any of the development in Moncton in the last 17 years that's the same. Same when it comes to storm walls and stuff like that, which that was their argument, whether it's right or wrong. Well, they use a lot of the stone for like beaches and stuff. Like it is stuff that we're seeing more and more that we never saw before back in 2007. Look at the north end of Moncton 2007 and look at the right end of Moncton. Huh? No, I'm just saying, but we're seeing the growth and our area is where you're not doing a quarry in the middle of Moncton. You're gonna get this stuff from us. I know you want to think if you want to keep a rural lifestyle, but this is the kind of stuff that does happen in the rural lifestyle.
Okay, so I think we're kind of away from questions and into debate. Do you have questions?
Bill's all done.
I have a
Do you have a question?
Okay, so in my last question, I do understand how originally it was zoned conservation for the 3 reasons that you mentioned. And I do recall from your presentation, and I did read in preparation of this meeting. Would you be willing to state any potential cons if we were to change this from, if we were to rezone this, instead of just giving us 3 positive spins, would you be willing to give us 1 or 2 possible negative consequences if we were to rezone this?
But I did mention a few. I guess the viewscape is going to be impacted in certain areas, so that is one of the cons. And there will be a loss of trees and potential habitat for animals. Those are cons of this rezoning.
You don't think of anything else? There's no other possibility?
I'm sure there is, but on top of my head, those are the 2 I'm thinking.
Okay.
Not a question.
So I think we did with questions for Phil.
So, again, I think the recommendation is if, council has a choice to move forward with it, or they can ultimately abandon it. Obviously in order to respect timelines, if council requires more information or are looking for some more specificities on certain things. But, our recommendation would be at least to proceed with first and second reading by title tonight. Again, it does not absolve council of moving forward with it. It just means it's going to the next step. And then council still has the ultimate decision at a future meeting to treat this application. So obviously,
So,
what council wants.
yeah, where are we at? Do we want to proceed with the reading? Okay, we're kind of supposed to do questions though, so you know what I mean? So I guess the question is, are we prepared to proceed with the first reading? Or are we tabling those for this meeting?
I would personally like to see that I'd like more clarity on that 2007 document.
Okay. Okay, so nobody's comfortable proceeding with the first reading of
I'm
this
not.
meeting? Okay, so let's table it. If we have requests for information, let's get those into you right away so that we can review them at the committee of the whole meeting and have the debate that we tried to have here this evening, and that's not what this forum is for. And we'll have the debate at the committee of the whole meeting. And we'll have to determine if we need anything else from Phil, I guess.
Just by council tabling it, for them to proceed if they ultimately wanted to decide with it. They would have to do it in the meeting in June. We have no meeting in July, so we would have to do first and second reading at the latest at the June meeting. Or do a special meeting in July if council wanted to move forward with it. And then ultimately make a decision at the August meeting. Again, that's why we were recommending that first and second reading done tonight, so at least that's done, but it doesn't move forward with it. But understandably, if council wants to push it to another meeting, we'll respect that.
Well, you guys can vote on it. I'm just one person saying, I'm not comfortable with that.
So I think Phil just said something.
I just want to make sure I understood when you say you get clarity from 2007 meeting, is a staff report and the rezoning and agreement for the province sufficient? Is there anything specific you're looking for?
Basically, I want to see the language that if, like, what was conceded in order to get. So like, if they had to rezone something in order to get a certain zoning.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to rezone it out.
Mhm.
I just want to see more explicit language in like what that trade-off was.
Yep, so.
In whatever form that,
Yeah, there was a staff report explaining the rationale between why this buffer was included, so I'll send that report directly.
thanks.
Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so, you know what, we'll just do a vote with the cards. All those in favor of reading the first motion, raise your card. Okay, so yes, okay. Okay, anything else before we? There's nothing else.
No, anything on the agenda?
So it would now take a motion to adjourn.